Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Medicine Mermaids podcast, stories of womb, water, and womanhood. We are your hosts, Naomi Maharaj and Naomi Ring, and yes, we are both named Naomi. So, in this podcast, we're here to share real stories on all things women's health, embodied spirituality, and ancient feminine mysticism. We value authentic, sovereign expression, and our greatest hope with this podcast is to awaken the unique medicine that lives within each of you. The title of today's episode is Medicine Mermaid: The Story of Lilith, Reevaluating the Sacred in Sexuality and the Collective Shadow of Feminine Exile. So, first, we're just going to give a little introduction in case this is your first time on our podcast, and then we'll dive into today's episode. So, I'm Naomi Maharaj. I'm a women's holistic health practitioner devoted to guiding women on the path of self reclamation and embodied sovereignty. My work weaves together body image healing, womb care, and female health through modalities like clinical herbalism, holistic pelvic care, and subconscious reprogramming. I support women in remembering the divine beauty that they are and attuning to the deep wisdom and medicine within their flesh.
And I'm Naomi Ring, an integrative somatic healer and astrologer, supporting women to embody their wholeness and root into who they truly are. My main tools are evolutionary astrology, family constellations and trauma healing, and Akashic records. I integrate ancient practices, devotional dance, and subconscious reprogramming to guide women on their journeys home. And so we'll introduce our podcast a little bit more, what this episode is about. And as we move through our call today, we will be exploring the story of Lilith, in what ways she has lived in our psyches, how she reflects the patriarchy, and the collective shadows around the feminine and feminine exiled power, as well as our own. And
And
we
as
will,
we
oh, yeah.
And as we explore these archetypes, we just want to acknowledge that the archetypes, the Holy Seductress and the Sacred Whore, these words, seductress and whore, there are so many different cultural interpretations that people put on them. There's a lot of baggage on these words. And our hope is that you take what serves you and you leave the rest. And we want to, in this episode, to really break down what these words represent in their origin, in their core, in their essence, and how the patriarchy, how capitalism, how modern religion has shaped these words to twist and distort what they mean and how we understand them, right? And we're here to do this without perpetuating the cycles of judgment, but for each of us to self-inquire what these archetypes represent for us, right? We're here to ask questions like, what does the whore actually mean? And why has it become associated with a woman having lots of sexual partners? Why has it become this concept of a woman exchanging sex for money? Right? We're here to understand and to break down why there are so many negative charges around these words by using the story and the myth of Lilith. So, yeah, should we get started? Do you want to dive into the myth?
Yeah. So, in order for us to talk about the myth of Lilith, I just want to bring up the difference between myth and archetype before we get into her story. And I took a lot of inspiration and the many of the words of Tom Jacobs in his book Lilith Healing the Wild. This is a book I read basically for my studies of astrology. I'm very curious about Lilith, the archetype. And so this is the book I found that also brought in the myth. And he basically writes how myth teaches us how we should behave in order to be acceptable and successful in our given cultural and social contexts, while archetype describes a natural part of who we are and how we are inclined to live if we honor ourselves. And so, just want to share this with you so that this starts sinking in and we will get to know throughout this podcast these differences in how the story of Lilith is told, how we work with Lilith, and especially when we go into the archetypes of the Holy Seductress and the Sacred Whore, understanding how, right, these are parts that already live within us and how we can honor ourselves and meet them within, and also how we meet the myth, right, within our lives. So Lilith's story begins at first with Adam. And Adam was made as a hermaphrodite. which means he was both male and female. And he noticed that all the animals had their counterpart except for him. And he attempted to make love with the female ones, but he quickly noticed that none were made for him. And so he asked God, why are all the animals having a mate and I don't? And, he was essentially looking for his other half. So God explained that he was both in one body. And to assuage Adam's loneliness, God separated Adam in two parts, male and female, resulting in Adam and Lilith. They were happy, they could talk and to share, and they had time together, and they would play, and they would eat, and they would have sex, and they were sharing life. But when it came to the lovemaking, Adam insisted on dominance, right? Adam just wanted to always be on top, and Lilith wouldn't have it. So she insisted that they were made equal, made of the same stuff at the same time, but Adam protested. He believed that while he was made of earth, dust, which is clean, Lilith was made of sediment, which is impure. This standoff between them led to her leaving him. That was her choice. She made that choice to not be dominated, and she left on her own into the wilderness. So, yeah, she left the only man on earth. It was that bad. And she was intent on being who she was and expressing herself in her natural way, expressing the feminine in her natural way. She lived in a cave on the edge of the Red Sea, and she took care and fended for herself. It was said that that's where the demons lived. Lilith enjoyed a social life and copulated with these beings freely, and I'm almost sure that copulated means also had intercourse. So just if someone didn't know like me, that's what it means. And as a result of her copulation, I don't know if that's a verb, it is said that she buried 100 immortal children each day. And thus we find the first hints of the whore in the myth of Lilith. So she created a place for herself where she thrived in her own way, right? She was living her best life, a life that she knew she couldn't have had with Adam, where she was not dominated and where she could express herself creatively and sexually openly. And she was here more whole than in her relationship with Adam, even though she knew that he was her other half. Adam, sitting over in the Garden of Eden, surrounded by all the wondrous beauty, became lonely once again. And so he asked God to make Lilith come back so that he would not be lonely anymore. And so God sent 3 angels with very difficult names to pronounce. And here I go, Senoi, Sansenoi, and Semanglof. And if it's not that way, come at me at the comments, that's fine. So to Lilith, yeah, they came with a message, and it said, come back to live with Adam, or your immortal children will die and no longer be immortal, and you will watch them die, right? And so she tells the angels that God had appointed her to a very special task of watching over the children, so this treatment would be unjust. And yet their reply was that that's not important, and that the punishment would happen if she not return to Adam. And she chose to not return to Adam, and so her children began dying. And she responded with rage, and I would add grief, obviously. And in her rage, it is said that Lilith continues to seek revenge against men and humanity in general. Now, in a different story that I have read also that talks about Lilith, because it's very rare that you'll find the stories of Lilith, it is shared that she would rape men and kill the children. So there was a pact that she made with the angels that if anyone wore a necklace with the name of these 3 angels, she knew that they were protected and she wouldn't touch them, right? She wouldn't harm them. And so at one point in time in history, it is said that people who believe this story would literally wear these necklaces. And there was, I believe, a necklace found with the name of these 3 angels. And yeah, it was this myth of Lilith being a demon and seeking revenge and hunting down men and children, it's not something that started, in this holy book and in what in Judaism we call the Tanakh, which is the Bible for us. It's something that lives even before in other mythologies, and it's very interesting because they don't go by the name of Lilith. Maybe they just go by the name of Lily, Lila. Like there's just all these variations, but in the essence, she's always portrayed as a demon. And I will get now into why that is. And as I mentioned above before, a myth is a way, like a social construct, a social instruction guide, right? And so we tell each other and our children these stories that penetrate into our psyches, and it leaves traces for all of us on how to think, what to believe, how to behave, and so that we can live in a way that would make us fit into society. So myth is the primary vehicle for that learning, and that's why across all cultures we see this happening, right? And that could explain why there's so many cultures that had a figure like Lilith, right? Whether it had different names. And so in a way, what we have to understand is that this being a primary vehicle, that's the function, right? The function is important. It isn't a bad thing necessarily. It's just that the function of it is to inform, and it's to give some kind of guideline to cultures, to societies that otherwise might have really been in a lot of chaos if they're not told how to, right? The how to of being. So myth in the end is just a vehicle, and it gives us context. And in this myth, what it teaches us first and foremost, and especially for women, is that if you go against God, you will suffer, right? If you think you have the right to go against God's agenda, then you will be miserable, suffering, and alone. And so this myth has aided the patriarchy in making women afraid of their natural feminine, right? That is informed by the goddess, but has also made the idea of questioning God a dangerous prospect. And I would add questioning men, right? Questioning the masculine for a long time, at least. Now, of course, we see a different kind of movement for quite a few years, maybe even a century. But it was very deep penetrated in our society for most of history, or for most of time, that we cannot question the patriarchy, and we can and therefore we're taught, how could we question God? So in this way, in a way though, this is like a patriarchal deception also, like this depiction of God being one that we must fear, because at least for me, God is not one who punishes, and it's not the way I see God, right? And I know that many who are reconnecting today with the word God, with the essence of God itself, wouldn't see it this way either, right? They are taking back this name in a way, just like we are taking back the story of Lilith. And so, yeah, I say that because I'm someone who has, in a way, had to I love using the word God, and I love connecting to God, and I feel I'm very connected to God, but I have never seen it as like a man who's going to punish me. And I feel like a lot of people kind of like step back from connecting to God. And I know this is a bit off topic, but because of the same kind of way how the word whore has a connotation that is negative, in a way, the word God has also become equivalent to something that's, if you are in any way believing in God, then you might be judged very quickly as someone who isn't freely thinking for themselves and is just submitting, right? Because that's in some way we've learned to, in more like spiritual worlds, also see God as being one who punishes, and it's like perpetuating this big deception in a way. So I'm all about nowadays of like reclaiming also God and remembering the essence of God. So that's all I will say. I just really wanted to add this. And so, yeah, in a way, just to recap, Lilith here in this myth, in this story, she's facing the loss of her children, and she basically loses status in society. And she's exiled for wanting her freedom and expressing her truth. and the desire to be equal in her own way. Even if that equality is not literal, right? Because something that I believe in also is men and women are not going to be equal in the same exact way. We are equals, in my belief, but we're not maybe, having the same purpose. We're not maybe needing to be exactly the same for us to be equal, for us to be of the same value and worth. And especially to society, we can be different and still be equal. So Lilith teaches us that there's nothing to prove. This is what I feel from her, that we don't need to be the same or to submit into the way that we're meant to be, that we can be our own person, that we can choose our freedom, and that we can go up against that patriarchal desire to submit and subdue the feminine into a certain role and type, and just kind of be your own person. But you have to be willing to face the exile. You have to be willing in a way to face loss and grief and kind of go through these stages of remembering who you are and be willing to step out into your own and fend for yourself and kind of circle back all around and go through the rage and the grief and go through also a lot of like taking your ownership of like the responsibility of your choices. There's a lot of that Lilith, the myth, brings to us if we are desiring to look at it and remember that it's very easy to vilify the parts of us that we're never speaking of openly, but when we want to look at maybe the ways that Lilith stories live within us, that maybe some of us have already lived in some way or another a Lilith type of story, right? So that's something more to ponder on and maybe reflect as we continue through this episode. Now that we'll, continue onwards with the archetypes and everything, just how do we live these this Lilith myth or stories in our life? Have we lived it? Have we seen others around us live it? And then with the archetypes, we're also gonna take a look on how are they living within us. So yeah, Naomi, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, there's so many incredible threads to explore, and I think that as we start breaking down the Holy Seductress and the Sacred Whore, these kind of two aspects of the archetype of Lilith, as we break them down, the myth of Lilith is, such a beautiful story to kind of guide us. It's this compass because it encapsulates so much of our society in this one story, right? All of this, this idea of punishment that you were bringing up, this woman who just wanted to be on top and didn't want to be controlled by her partner suddenly becomes this symbol of sexual sovereignty, liberation, and sacred rage. And it's sad that that's what happened, that all she did was say what she wanted, express her desire, and she had to go on this long journey of exile and experience all of these projections of whore and demon. And it just reveals kind of so much of our society in this one story. And as you and I love to talk about, there's the mystery beneath the story, right? There's the feminine, her story version of the story, which we will break down, as well as Eve, because Eve is almost unintentionally the second part of Lilith's story, who is also so involved in our understanding of Lilith as well. They're kind of like sisters in this conversation. So yeah, so thank you for sharing that beautiful story. And I think we can dive into the Holy Seductress and the Sacred Whore.
Good.
So, the Sacred Seductress or the Holy Seductress, um, both of these energies are aspects within us, right? As Naomi was talking about, they're parts of us, they're parts of our collective unconsciousness, they're parts of our psyche that we get to play and explore. And the Holy Seductress may be more misunderstood than the Sacred Whore in many ways, right? That how we understand the Holy Seductress is this energy of life force. It's this magnetism that a woman carries, but also anyone who carries a strong feminine presence carries. It's this power that flows from, our pelvis, from our womb, from our sacral center. It's this creative life force that isn't necessarily sexual, but it is just the the prana, the energy that we generate, that we circulate through our bodies, through our chakra systems, whatever terms you use. It's the energy that propels us through the world and nourishes our desires and nourishes our dreams, and yes, even our sexual fire. But that isn't the core of what the Holy Seductress is. It's just um, this channel of flow of energy that is ultimately magnetic, right? Um, when people are really living that seductress energy, they're magnetic. There's something alluring about them. There's something that's like, wow, I just really want to be around that person, because they are able to just fully allow that energy to flow through them. And what's really sad is that this energy is our sensuality. It's our ability to feel the pleasures of life and to taste the pleasures of life and smell and hear. And right, people who are very connected to this energy, you know, because they're very engaging with their senses, right? This energy is sensuality, but what happens is that sensuality is misunderstood for sexuality, right? A woman who's just feeling herself and is really in her body because of the context of patriarchy and these very machista,
Mhm.
machismo type religions that are very male dominated, they perceive a woman's sensuality as sexuality. She's giving herself up to a man. She's asking for sexual attention, when that's not the truth of this. Perhaps that's so, and that's totally okay. There is a side of the
Like
Holy
the shadow
Seductress.
aspect. Mm.
Yeah, but even a beautiful non-shadow aspect of the Holy Seductress is the kind of sex appeal, the like, look at me, the I am beautiful, I am desirable, but it's not all of it. Like
It's in a
this,
different way. I mean, it's not manipulative, right? That's I think one of the misunderstandings that for many, all of this energy is like, oh, she's just being manipulative. She's just using her energy to get something, and I think it's misunderstood that this is an energy that circulates, that we can, that that she knows how to circulate within herself, the Holy Seductress, right? That she's here to like alchemize in a way all of like the pain and the joy of life, and she's seducing herself in the end of the day. So that's how you're saying it's not necessarily a shadow.
yeah, yeah, and perhaps she's seducing someone else, and that's great if that's her intention. But at the core of the Holy Seductress is it's seduction of self. It's I'm so enraptured by my own body and by my own creative force that sure, if a man walks and sees me and he's attracted, that's wonderful. But this is first and foremost for myself. And I think a lot of women have also been culturally taught by our mothers to use our sensuality to allure and to attract a sexual mate first. And then if she is fed by her own sexual energy, that's second. But really, it should be the other way around, right? We should be teaching our daughters to understand her sexual energy as first for herself, to fill her own cup first. And then if a partner is filled by that, then that's kind of the benefit or the right.
We see it in the movies, right? How many times have we seen the woman kind of like perk up her boobs and go up to the cops and, oh, do you really need to give me a ticket? Like just kind of use her. I mean, I feel like that's a way that the Holy Seductress is portrayed in movies many times, but in like that shadowy aspect of like the woman using her, her beauty, her radiance, right, to get her way. And this is something that is, it's kind of just like you said, it I think it's just shown to women like, oh, this is a possibility, this is how if you're doing that, it means this, but it's never seen on movies. Well, maybe it is, but maybe more rarely, or it's less, I think it's less admired or understood when it's like you're seeing it, like a woman just, yeah, enjoying her own sensual expression, right? Like all you just said before, like it's, I don't know if that's celebrated as like, oh, look at her, like she got to get, rid of the ticket, or she got a free coffee, or I mean, that's cool stuff too. Like I'm not trying to shame that. I think, one time a friend told me like, girl, men love to help us, like just smile, and and like we were like, together in Crete, just having fun, going to like all these little like shops and sitting in restaurants, and we were like super flirty and joyful and giving our smiles and all of that. And we got like a free like croissant or something, and it was also nice because there's something in there like you talked about intent. And I looking at it, I feel like what's missing is there is an exchange. Our beauty, our radiance, our smile, that beautiful energy that we can bring outward is valuable enough to be considered enough of an exchange to, yeah, to get something for free. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I take back the whole like that could be the shadow thing, because yeah, it doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing or a shadow or something to shame a woman for if she knows how to work her energy. You know what I mean? Like, that's beautiful. I think intent is the key here, because I think sometimes there could be more of a manipulative, like malicious intent, but I think many times it can also be innocent and just part of the beauty of the Holy Seductress, that like there's all this radiant, juicy energy for her to share. And I think in the end, what you said is the most important thing is if we just kind of take that back and we first and foremost teach each other and our future and like our children, the society, to know how to fill our own cup first, for this to be something that's beautiful and celebrated within us and like juicy and accessible and just like, yeah, seen that way, then to bring it out to the world, it will look different, it will feel different too.
Yeah, and I think with the innocence piece, right? This seductress energy, this sensuality is innocent, right? But
Yeah,
it is the patriarchy that has twisted it to be something evil, right? Bringing in Lilith. And I think because of that projection, a lot of women hold in their holy seductress energy
yeah,
because it's it's reinforced to us as, oh, you're just asking for then unwanted sexual attention, right? Because our sensual energy can't be distinguished from our sexuality, it's made to be the same thing. Women then repress their natural sensuality, right? And they withhold it. And then
yeah,
when they witness another woman who maybe is able to be in that sensual energy quite freely, perhaps is even in her sexuality, right? Then there is things like rivalry and competition and all of these things that are also
yeah.
reinforced to us as normal by the patriarchy. So I guess the moral of this story is just to perhaps begin to discern where am I conflating my natural creative urge to just be in my body and to express my sensuality within the world. Where am I conflating that with kind of this sexual energy, and where is that not actually mine?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we move into the shadow, the double shadow, as we call it.
Yeah, do you want to do that?
Sure. So the why we call it the double shadow of the Holy Seductress is because, and Naomi's already touched a bit on it just now recently in these last few sentences. There is the shadow that comes from the outside, and there's that internalized aspect to it. So that's why it felt like, this double shadow. And so, yeah, like we spoke, there is the part that can be the same as how the snake is perceived, right? Where it is perceived that the snake is like tempting and manipulative and this. And I feel like with the intent of that, then the Holy Seductress does have this shadow where she does use all of that energy in a very manipulative way. Like we're gonna how to express it, like it is withholding something that is innocent and beautiful from the Holy Seductress, which is all that love and like life force energy that she brings. When it comes from that place that is pure, that this becomes way more like a hook, like I'm gonna take something, it's sneaky, it feels different, right? So I think you mentioned this when we spoke as well, that it's her wanting to feel so special. And so there's this seduction of a married man. And I don't know if you want to like, talk more of that, the home wrecker within the Holy Seductress. So I'm gonna let you, because I know you brought this and I love how you share this.
Yeah, or the femme fatale, the like the woman who almost enjoys the pleasure of saying, look at me, I am desirable, and this pleasure that comes from being the chosen one. And like, you're
Like
a
this.
married man, but you have a woman already, but I'm being chosen above her. There's this very malicious, almost insidious side of the Holy Seductress that a lot of women unintentionally inherit, um, and embody in their lives. And I think it's important for us to bring up and be really honest with ourselves about, it's totally fine if this is, if this has been your past, or if this is something that you embody and live in your life, right? This kind of like using our holy seductress sensual energy to hurt a man or to hurt another woman. And you know men are also equally complicit in this, right? With the femme fatale, right? There's a lot of projection onto this woman as well, that she must be good in bed, or she must be all of these things. She must be wild and crazy like Lilith, right? So there are multiple factors involved with the creation of this of this
Yeah.
shadow.
I think for sure, like for a woman, like you said, we're not here to shame or anything, but when this happens, I would invite us to like look in on like why do we have that need, right? Like what is it that we're lacking maybe? What is it that we actually do desire and feel is missing in our lives, that there is this impulse to go and take, right? That rivalry with another woman, that need to prove something, like all of that that can come up, where it's like, where am I not seeing already my beautiful energy, like all I have to offer? Where am I not valuing myself, right? Because this is like in a way the medicine to that. um I would never want to tell another woman what's right or wrong, but of course there is a wound there and a reason why the shadow is alive. And it's always important to ask ourselves, well, what do I need? Because that is a way to love ourselves, and it would be probably feeling much better, like it is a way to take back the holy seductress and not have to continue perpetuating these other sides of some of these archetypes that it doesn't really support us. In the end of the day, it doesn't support even the connection from woman to woman. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's this belief that I'm being sovereign when I embody this, that perhaps isn't actually fully true, right? It's also about being super honest with ourselves, not just our intent, but what's actually manifesting in my life. Am I actually happy with the way this energy is being responded to by other partners or by my environment, right? Yeah.
Definitely.
So now we can talk about the sacred whore, who is a beautiful kind of continuation of the holy seductress energy. If the holy seductress is our sensuality and just the birthing of this creative force within our body, then the sacred whore is how we take this energy and manifest it within our sexual relationships, right? And so again, the horror is a concept that each and every one of us has our own interpretation. And maybe the horror isn't a word that you like. For a long time I didn't like using the word horror just because it just felt very offensive to me. But since Naomi and I have been talking a lot about it, there's been this kind of reclaiming of this word and this neutralization of all of the baggage around it. And so when we're referring to the sacred whore, we're talking about this part of ourselves that sees sexuality as sacred, right? When we give our bodies in lovemaking to another person or another partner, we do it as a way of connecting with God, as merging with spirit. There's this kind of merging of self with God through another person. And that act is so, so special. And not in this kind of like very um, overly restrictive religious perspective of like, you should be shamed if you're not always engaging in the most sacred sex humanly possible, and you should be married before you have sex. That's not kind of the energy. It's it's stripping all away all of the shaming and all of the rules and guidelines around what is sacred. We make up what's sacred. We decide what is sacred, right? Whether that is having sex with multiple partners and you're non-monogamous and right, marriage is not a thing that you embrace, or if you are someone that is a one partner for life kind of person, right? And you do seek that thing that people are calling sacred union, right? It's not about what it is exact, like what sex is to be sacred for you, but it's how. It's the frequency behind the sexual relationships. It's the what's the again, Naomi brought up intent, like what is my intention behind choosing a partner, behind having sex, right? Am I doing it to like feed these needs within myself that I can't satisfy, or is it that I fill my own cup, Holy Seductress, and now I'm meeting someone who also fills their own cup as a way of merging with God. And so yeah, so I think that's the core of what we want to bring up with the sacred whore. It's just it's this intentionality around sex, and it's not about giving rules. How many people? It's not about how many people you have sex with, but it's about how you engage with those
Yeah.
sexual partners. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like that they tie in well together because the Holy Seductress will teach us how to value our sexual energy, right? As like the life force it is, and then how we then take that and when we share it with the other, how it becomes this connection that can just be sacred and we have that in mind and then, go do as you wish. But like just that value that we gain when we recognize the gift that is within us and our energy and what we're bringing to the table. So,
And I
yeah,
think also like this reclamation of the sacred whore has been so important for me, and I think for you too, Naomi, just because we both have been so burned by the kind of hyper modern feminist sexual liberation fuck around movement, you know? And I think it's natural. I think it's very natural as like a young teenager, as a young woman to want to explore and to want to explore your sexual identity and all of these different things. But I know we both have talked about just how much this kind of pressure to almost always say yes in order to get to know yourself and to be free has actually brought a lot of wounding and perhaps not as much discernment as has been
yeah,
necessary to avoid getting burned by certain
yeah.
situations, certain men. I put myself in so many dangerous
Oh
situations
my God.
because I've felt this pressure to be young and to be wild and to be free, and being 28 and looking back on certain experiences that I've had, like I honor myself, I love myself for everything that I've done in the past sexually, but there are many situations that I could have prevented myself from being. And if sexuality had been taught to me in this context of it's sacred, but without the religious control, but just what is it that you're actually seeking with this person, and can he actually give it to you before engaging in lovemaking. Yeah.
It's just like literal pure respect for our own bodies. I think that's the part that I wish I had understood more of like I'm still gonna be young and beautiful and I can still share with anybody, but like I can choose me first, respect me first, like yeah, it doesn't mean that there wasn't any respect. It doesn't like I always try to not look at these things as black and white, right? It doesn't mean that there was none of that, but I feel like the emphasis was so much on exploration and being free and like I don't like this word, but liberal or whatever with ourselves, that there was almost like no space to also get to know our own like body in a way how the Holy Seductress is like, let's circulate first within, let's get to know our own juiciness, our own fluids, like our own inner waters. Let's get to know what this is. What am I bringing to the table? Like, how do I want to share myself with another? What's okay for me? What's not? Like, making it kind of about us in a way, because that's not very allowed in some way. Like, if you're a woman that had her own needs and desires, you know, you are too high maintenance, maybe. Like, this is just when I was in my early 20s, this is just like the feeling that I had. around like sharing an intercourse. Like I couldn't be high maintenance. I couldn't have a preference. It had to be to please like, you know, what Adam wants. Like he wants to be pleased. He doesn't want to be lonely. He's not saying like, please God, bring me my other half. I miss her. No, he's saying I don't want to be lonely anymore. Like make Lilith come back. Right? So like I feel like that's the part that is important to, yeah, to like first remember that we're allowed to be in devotion to ourselves first, and first I'm like, yeah, I really like how Lilith in some way decides to just go and meet her needs. And then from there, she'll meet others who can meet her halfway, right? So I feel like that's a lot what the sacred whore is about, like reminding us how can we meet our needs and how we come and share that with the other. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Or did I just
Yeah.
go off the rails? I usually do,
No.
people. I'm sorry. I usually do.
Don't
That's what
apologize.
I do.
So, do you want to
Yeah,
dive into the shadow side
yeah,
of the horror, which we've already been talking about,
yeah.
but
I mean, we talked a lot about the consequences, right, of what happens in a way when we share with others, maybe in the different ways that, I think each woman can reflect on how it has been for her and her journey, right, through it. And we can talk now. You want to go into our little
yeah.
Lilith and Eve, or
Yeah, yeah. So, in exploring kind of the shadow side of the
yeah,
horror, the unconscious ways in which we manifest our horror archetypes in a more shadowy way, we will be kind of exploring the story of Lilith, of course, the archetype of Lilith, with Eve, because as we shared in the beginning, after Naomi shared the myth of Lilith, Lilith and Eve are kind of
mm,
together unintentionally. They're brought together. The contrast, right? The story is told often in contrast of don't be like Lilith, right? Because Lilith just ran off and became a demon. And then from Lilith came Eve, and Eve is just the symbol of purity and of domestication, this perfect wife for Eve or for Adam, who then birthed all the children. And because of Lilith's, right, Eve was then punished, and now all women carry the burden of Eve of carrying children, right? So we'll be using this contrast, and looking at them in a new light, in a way that we can actually take their energy, their essence, and reclaiming it right within ourselves, so that we can express our sacred horror in a way that's more aligned for us.
yeah. So I'll just share a bit of like who is Eve. So many of you probably already know how the story continues because that's the story we have gotten, right? Where it starts with Adam and Eve. But for whoever doesn't know and is new to this whole thing, so what happens? We left off where Lilith decides that she's not coming back, and she's now gone into rage because her children, her mortal children, are now dying. And Adam's like, God, what happened? Where's Lilith? And so, like, give me, I need something, right? And so here's the part we know where God takes a rib, right, bone from Adam's rib cage and creates Eve out of his ribs. And now Eve is the perfect half of Adam because now Eve is here to assuage Adam, to fulfill his every fantasy and be the exact version of what a woman, what the feminine should be. And in many ways, this is where many believe the like patriarchal concept of the feminine is born, like that part of like how men can tell a woman how to be a woman, right? Here it's where it begins because Eve in a way is the censored, the easy, the light version of the feminine. It's she comes in literally to fulfill Adam's desires. And so, the story then continues there in the Garden of Eden, and one day some say as revenge, Lilith sends the snake. Some say Lilith is the snake or the snake is Lilith. But either way, the snake comes along and manipulative and, sneaky, sneakily brings Eve to the lovely tree of life and persuades her to take a bite of that juicy apple. So, yeah, then it all goes to shit. So that's basically it. The good girl Eve comes along, and this is how it's seen, right? There's the good girl and then there's the bad girl. And what Naomi and I are questioning and maybe bringing up is, well, can we maybe find a little good and bad in both? Can we maybe see them actually kind of more like sisters and getting each other, and Lilith maybe looking out for her sister Eve as opposed to like opposing, revengeful, whatever. Let's see how it goes. So the good girl Eve, when we're in that shadow aspect of the sacred core, we are in a way forgetting, right, in the sacredness, we're like losing all connection to our own desires. We talked about this in a way before. It's that part, that phase where we're like more about the giving, right, focused too much on the desires of the others, like sharing in an unconscious way, like with the other. It's all more performative, right? We want to be good, we want to please the other, the man, whatever, right? We're like in the flowing. I'm flowing. I'm the feminine that flows, right? Like I'm laid back enough for him. Here, take whatever you want. Like Naomi said, the waxed version of the feminine. I have like, the perfect moan. This is all like this. Of course, we're going very much into the sexual aspects. Um, I'm good in bed. Like it's a whole piece of neglect pie, and there's no prioritizing the self. It's really about the other, right? So in that case, Eve has this desire of really receiving the other and merging with the other, the lover god, right? To be the other half. It's so imprinted in her. She wants to be that other half. There's no sense of self in a way. And in her core, she has good intentions, right? In her core, she has that desire for connection, her sensitivity to rejection, right? Um how we come out and step into a more empowered version, right? So like she really desires to connect so much with the other that it just consumes her, but it's a positive core intention in the end of the day, and it comes with good intention. So when we do want to in a way reclaim that part, it is a lot about seeing the devotion, the beauty that Eve has when it comes to being that other half, right? It's in a way to also reclaim like the essence, but being very aware to not forget so much the self. Like there's this balance that needs to happen, and that's why I think we both believe that Eve and Lilith do balance each other, and we will talk in the end about the merging, because I believe only when we merge them can we really be that like whole version of the feminine. And then in the bad girl Lilith version, right, there's this like rigidity and sensitivity. So where Eve was very like attentive to the other needs, Lilith's like, not you, boy, right? It's very like selfish, all about me. I'm gonna do whatever is good for me. There's a more hurtful energy. So that comes from like that wounding, the protectiveness. Like she had to fend for herself, right? She needed to take care of herself. There's no space for you here. It's only what I need now. And so it's more like heart numb. I believe these are like Naomi's words, heart numb, and like you need to in some way um like you need to prove yourself, right? So not Lilith, but the man needs to prove himself in order to be worthy enough. So yeah, it's like I am the sacred one and you're not kind of energy. And so that's the shadow in a way that she has, because in that she also doesn't see her shadow. She only sees the other shadow, and it's like in this above place. And yeah, everyone needs to prove themselves and no one's good enough. So it's keeping the man at long distance, right? And I believe Naomi shared something along the lines of like, that's when really the sexuality is used in a way against the man, like withholding the sex, like not giving all the love, like there's no sharing there. There's something that keeps them at bay of like you have to continuously prove yourself to be worthy to be in this space.
Yeah,
And
or I think it's like withholding love but giving sex. So all of this
right,
cheap, meaningless, empty sex when
exactly.
perhaps the partner really desires that devotion that Eve so easily gives. It's more of like the Lilith version is I don't actually fuck with that. And I think that that comes from the rejection of Lilith to begin with, right? Adam's rejection of Lilith's original desire to be on top and to have more
Yeah,
equality. She was so
exactly.
hurt by that that she said, fuck this, I'm going off on my cave, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
That pain, that suffering is what created this response of, well, you're just never going to be good enough because it's too hurtful. It hurt
Yeah.
too much.
It's exactly what you said, and because her original intent is to share, right? Her original intent is to connect, and I love that you brought that up. It's exactly that, that it's also like, yeah, I'm not gonna give you my heart and my love. It's just sexual, right? That's also definitely a shadow. Like it goes both ways. And yeah, her if we're talking like we did with Eve's deepest desire, so Lilith's deepest desire is to be equal and to merge without compromising her sense of self. That's very important key here, and her values and her desires. So there's a balance there to strike as well. And she desires for her pain to be seen as well, right? Like you said, she's very wounded and rejected. She's deeply feeling and sensitive, and there's this desire that is raw and human, like she wants human connection. There's, this meeting each other, and for the other to meet her at that top of the mountain, not just like her having to drag them up or them just expecting her to come down, but like, come here, meet me up here. um yeah, and then at Lilith's core, there's this depth, there's healing sexuality, her presence, her devotion, her ability to honor her own desires, like her desire for consent, her sovereignty, her ability to alchemize, her ability to choose herself first and hold her power, and to carry her shadows and to not reject herself first, because in a way she does choose herself. So these are things to rescue, and now we can talk about the moving out of the shadow, and you're right, the merging that we wanted to bring in, or
Yeah, so
add, of course, before that.
yeah, I think Eve and Lilith, like Naomi shared, they're just such beautiful contrasts to one another. And even in the story itself, right? Like how the story is originally told, as Naomi shared, that Lilith came back as the snake who sought revenge against Eve, who took her man and came to her and said, eat this forbidden fruit from the tree of life that then fucked up humanity, right? Like Naomi talked about that. Um, However, Lilith in her story version of this, Lilith, like Naomi said, it was actually a sister, and she came back to Eve because she knew that Eve was created to be domesticated. She knows what Eve was put up against and by whom and what was to be asked of her. She came back to help Eve because Eve had this veil of illusion upon her, and she came back to say, Eve, girl, eat this fruit. Why are you being asked not to eat the fruit? Because if you eat that fruit, you are going to be given the truth of the universe. So eat, girl, because that veil of truth or that veil will be taken away from you and you will see. And so in this version, Eve takes the fruit and she says, Adam, look what Lilith told us. Let's eat this fruit. And so then she does. She takes a bite and she is just blast open and completely understands what life is all about. And she gives it to Adam, and so does he. And God obviously gets angry about that, and the rest of the story goes on, right? But that was the point of why Lilith came in. And so, like Naomi brilliantly shared, like Lilith came here to support Eve, and Eve offers Lilith what she has to offer Lilith. And so it's so beautiful to see them together. And how we can move out of the shadow, right? So bringing everything that we've been talking about together, right? How do we recap? So returning to the sacredness of our bodies, right? Bringing in that holy seductress energy of what is my creative life force? What is sacred? It's me. It's my cup. It's my sensuality. It's my joy, my creative spark, right? Reflecting on what is our intention in using this energy. How do I take my seductress energy and use it in my life, in sex, in lovemaking with my sexual partners? What is my intention? Like, what is it that I truly desire? What is it that my partner genuinely desires? And how am I using that energy with this person? right? Our ability to discern, right? How we feel in intimacy. Is my partner responding to me in a way that makes me feel seen or that makes me feel rejected? And where am I perhaps bypassing my own desires or my own limitations in order to give this person what they want, Eve? Or where am I maybe closing myself off and not responding to that person's needs, more Lilith, right?
Out of
This,
the wound of rejection. And
yeah,
also like there's a lot of, right, the self, like how do I self-abandon for the sake of being loved? And I think that's in a way very present in both, whether it's for being loved, for feeling pretty, for desired, wanted, for just holding power, I would say, you
yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah. And how do we feel actually during lovemaking? Am I actually enjoying this, or am I performing to please someone else, or to be a sexually liberated woman? Am I actually enjoying the way that I'm using this energy, or am I using it because I'm being told to do it this way? Um, Discerning where we feel uncomfortable, right? Where in sex, oh, I actually don't like that, or where am I actually not feeling okay? Where is this seductress energy no longer flowing? Where is it being blocked off?
We don't want to
Um,
compromise our own integrity, right? We want to be present with ourselves and our, like, the energy that's flowing freely through us, and not like also then become someone that controls our energy out of this fear of like doing it wrong or being perceived in any way, but more like just very strongly reflecting on how does it feel good for me to share this energy, right? To share myself, to come and meet the other. What's my truth in this? What would I want to bring, not what I've been told, not like out of the fear, right? Or even from the wounding. That's also a part of how we can learn to take also responsibility for our sexual energy and our sensual energy, right? Taking that, it's our ability to respond, right? Responsibility. So taking that ownership of that again and being like, I'm making my choices because this is what feels good to me. And I'm no longer also projecting onto the patriarchy even or onto anyone else these choices. Like I own them. If I chose A, I want A. If I choose B, I want B. Right? But that takes us also like going into, okay, am I gonna own my desires or not? Because in a way, the patriarchy has taught us women that we're always responsible for like man's desires and their actions or behavior, right? If like we show up in a sexy dress and they are too tempted and they can't get their hands off of us, it's our fault somehow. And in some way, I believe like we're made responsible in that light. And so there's also an ick with responsibility, right? That then goes to the other side, very far away, of like it's somehow always the patriarchy fault. I don't know if I'm gonna make sense of this, but like if I do, please tell me, Naomi. But it's like I feel like it's then another way of like, since it's that thing of like when someone comes and tells you like something and makes it your fault, you then don't want any piece of the responsibility either, and you throw it back, right? That typical throwing back in each other's faces, the thing, and no one taking on the responsibility. So it's like what I'm trying to say is like if men can take back the responsibility for their desires, so can we, right? We still have a responsibility, maybe not the one that's been imposed on us, but there's still something there for us to take ownership of, and it's reclaiming our sacred whore, our holy seductress, what we want and how we show up. It's reclaiming our Lilith and Eve, right? That makes
yeah,
sense?
yeah, and that brings us to kind of how is it that we can take all these things that we've been talking about today and reclaim it, I guess, in a practical way within our own lives? Is how can we merge Lilith, Lilith's core, Lilith's deepest desire, her gifts, the blessings that she gives us, which is this radical sovereignty of self. This I will always choose myself first, and I will set my boundaries and take my space when I need it, and merging that core of Lilith with the core of Eve, right? Which Naomi shared is that deep desire and devotion within us to merge with source through our partner, right? And her love, her just givingness to this other person. So merging both of those pieces of Lilith and Eve together within ourselves, right?
Mm.
That's that in of itself we are arguing is how to reclaim the sacred whore and to experience sexual intimacy, sexual energy, Holy Seductress energy in such a more refreshing way, in a way that actually feeds us rather than feeding, um, yeah, feeding these shadow versions that don't actually feed anybody, but just distance ourselves from our own bodies and distance ourselves from God even more and even more.
Mm, I feel like the one of the things that we can do also to like just get rid of sometimes like the shame that we carry and these shadow aspects is like it's easy for something to remain in the shadows when it's not talked about, when it's, just exiled, rejected. It's there, it's like, hidden. But if we bring it up, if we allow ourselves to see it, whatever it is for us, whatever of all of this has resonated with you, right? For each person, it's going to be a bit different. But if we allow ourselves to see the ways that we've been in the shadow, like you mentioned earlier, you, or maybe you mentioned this to me, but I feel like I resonate with this. So it's like, in a way, before we brought all of this work, it was easier for us to see how we had been in the shadow version of Eve, right? But it wasn't that easy to see how we had also been in the shadow version of Lilith when it came to the sacred whore. Sorry, I'm having hiccups and I'm and so I feel like when we look at that, like we were able to look at that, and when we can look at it without needing to bring the shame, realizing, okay, what is the reason for this? Like, what is it that I truly needed? What brought me to this? With compassion, with loving eyes, just holding space for us with our raw humanness, then it's easier to then, honor also these parts within ourselves and merge them together and find that ability to kind of have both like those like Lilith boundaries and like a little bit of that spaciousness, but also that full devotion and merging of Eve. And I think it starts by first recognizing how much we want both of that, like all of that, how much we want both the belonging, the togetherness, and how much we want the freedom and the aloneness, which aloneness is not the same as loneliness, right? There's a difference between both of them. And how it kind of becomes this like woven infinity where we are transitioning from one to the other, how we can share both in love and in aloneness, right? And it's just being very attentive and present with our needs and just knowing that one doesn't take away from the other, and there's ways that we can connect and an exploration with self. Like again, we all have shadows, we all like hold these like shamed parts hidden away, hoping no one sees it because then we're going to be unlovable. But like we all crave this being loved and belonging, and I feel like just bringing that up is already it's huge, it's rich, it's moving the needle forward and just supporting us as a society to just reclaim these pieces, right? And do shadow work, integrate all of our parts and come back to wholeness and healing, right? All of that shame.
Yeah, and it's not easy, that shadow work. It's what I think is the hardest part of shadow work is that it's the shadow, right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes
It's
something that we don't see. We need to be pointed it out by someone else. And for me at least, with sex and exploring the sexual shadow, it hasn't been easy to be pointed out. Well, does it sound like your intentions were very great for that person? It sounded kind of selfish. That's been reflected to me a lot in my own Lilith journey over the last several months, last year, and it hasn't been easy to absorb. Like Naomi said, it's way easier to digest the shadow side of Eve, right? The like giving myself away to please another man, not really caring about my own needs, performing, blah, blah, blah. But to digest the shadow side of Lilith has been really tough, and to not see it in myself, but to have it pointed out by someone else. So just know, like, if you're feeling icky about anything that we've shared, like, it's totally normal because we all carry both of these, right? We carry both of these energies within ourselves. We carry the light and the shadow, the good and the bad I mean, I don't even like to use those terms because I don't really believe in that spectrum, but
But it's a spectrum.
yeah.
It's a human spectrum. And I feel like we have different phases in our lives. Like they sometimes overlap and sometimes they're just having their own set of, their own time within our timeline. And it's for some women it's almost unbelievable. Maybe it comes shock like I did that. No, I've always like they'll resonate more with one version than the other. It's like, no, I've always been an Eve. Like I would never do that. And then you find yourself in the other side and you're like, oh shit, I've done that. But that's huge. That I think recognizing shadow supports us in having so much more compassion like for others, and that starts with ourselves, and seeing like, yeah, we've done this too, and that's okay. It doesn't take away from our worth, our value, our like, being loved. And I feel like that's just something that threatens a lot of us sometimes. This like fear of like, oh my God, if I admit to having done this, like I'm less valuable and I'm less lovable and it's icky. But
Yeah,
yeah,
or it
just
adds to the
like,
shame party. Like it already
yeah,
adds to the the shame party of sex and body and all of that stuff, which girl, I get
mm.
you. I get
So
you.
yeah, I feel like we can close off. I just want to add like we both in our work support women with these in different ways and aspects, I feel. So just kind of want to point that out for anyone out there wondering and wanting to work with us, like whether it's through beautiful like beauty rewilding, right? Or even astrology, like I love to look at these 2 points of because you can look at up in astrology of like the true Lilith representing Lilith and mean Lilith for anyone who knows representing Eve. So in a way, there's so many ways to work with these energies and shadow work within a lot of what we do. And so if you're curious, you can always reach out to us as well. We'd love to get to know you and work with you. And we're what I love about us as practitioners, and yeah, I'm going for it. Okay, this is my Holy Seductress moment. What I love about us is that we're very raw and very human, and we've been through these things. We explore it with ourselves. We live it. We're human, and we're not pretending to be perfect or to know it all or to be in any other place. But I had once a yoga teacher share with me that like you don't need to be 10 steps forward in order to be some guide or support another. It's enough that you're just one step forward, and we all have something to give and we all teach each other. And our experiences are very valuable. So also if you just listen to that and that's enough, like take that. Your experiences are valuable, and yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you so much for joining us in this episode. We hope that you've taken something juicy and yummy with you to chew on in your life, and you can reach out to us
And
anytime.
share in the comments if you feel like just supporting us a little. Tell us what you take away from this episode. And yeah, follow us for more of these beautiful podcast episodes. We're always bringing something new and different. And that's
And yes,
it.
thank you so much. See you next time.
Ciao.